We all know that networking is a critical part of building our business. It's just something that should be practiced more. And there's a little bit of an art to it. And Dennis, I have to say, you're one of the best networkers that I know. I mean, you've done this a lot better than I've ever done it. So,
It just
you know,
it comes naturally for me, but I mean, but you find there's tools, there's groups, that add value. I'm in 2 or 3 different networking groups and, all 3 were different and, but they're there to help me connect people, but it's also then for me to help other people grow their business. And that's the rewarding part about it. So, if you're in networking, it's not about just taking, it's about giving and taking. That's where the real reward comes in. And it's about relationships and getting to know people. And I love talking to people and hearing stories. And so it's really easy. You don't go into it trying to sell, you go into it just, again, trying to make more friends and develop relationships with people.
Scott Talley is with Network in Action, and he's got an interesting story to tell because, as we have just said, it's important for us to network, but he didn't even start networking until a few years ago in his 50s, which is amazing to me. And to hear about some of the people he's met in such a short time, it's super impressive. And some of the things that he shares on this podcast, I think that whether you are an extrovert, introvert, somewhere in between. If you don't really know that first step, this is going to be an interesting listen and watch for you because I think Scott does share a few things and some pointers and tips that are either reminders or they're going to give you kind of a premise to work from. But this was a good one, Dennis. I really enjoyed talking to Scott. He was a lot of fun.
WFH with two guys. Now here's Benny and Dennis.
Dennis, without a doubt, I think it's an obvious thing. It's not necessarily an easy thing for people to do, but networking has certainly helped me to be able to develop my business. And I've been able to get some opportunities I would never have had without being able to talk with various people.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you and I would not have met back in the
For
day
sure.
if it hadn't been for networking.
Mhm.
I was, VP of purchasing, you were selling. I mean, even inside the organization, I viewed myself as the kingpin of networking for the employees and for the external candidates because I was kind of the filter to marriage people inside these organizations and stuff. And so for me, it comes natural. I mean, people joke that I'm kind of the king of networking. I mean, my list is miles long, and it's a give and take, and it's honest that I want to help people, and I'm hoping in return they want to help me. And it's you find those people really, really quickly, and those are the ones you navigate to. But I find it interesting in today's world, there's lots of people that are in transition and they'll come and say, "Oh, I need to start networking." It's like if you're waiting to start networking right before you're going to get laid off, you missed your opportunity. You should have been
Mhm.
doing that 3, 5, 10 years ahead of time, building those lists of people and those contacts. So if you're safe in your job right now and you're not networking, you better start networking. And we've got,
Mhm.
I'm going to call it the king of kings on networking. Scott Talley's joined us to talk about networking. And it's just, there's so much you can do with it, and the benefits are just amazing.
Welcome,
Scott,
Scott.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And, Dennis, you're right. It's like the old Chinese proverb: the best time to plant a tree was 100 years ago, and the second best time is today. And uh, if I'm the king of networking, I sure got to it late. I didn't start it until I was about 50, and I have great regrets about that.
yeah, I mean,
I
because it,
recently saw where Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, and Bill Gates, all three of them said if they could change one thing about their life earlier, they would start networking sooner. Isn't that interesting?
yeah, I mean, and it's so important because it helps you personally, but also helps your business grow, and it helps other people. I mean, that there's nothing better than to see people be successful, and so it's fun to connect people and realize that okay, hey, I was a connector of those. I have one that he is a manufacturing environment, and I had an R&D person that had a way to find tax credits. He'd never done this. He ended up getting about $185,000 in tax credits by me connecting those two people together. He thinks I walk on water today because he would never have got that $185,000 in tax credits because he didn't know they existed.
He will go out of his way to find a way to repay you.
Yeah. And so those are the things that I think, people just take for granted about networking. And it can be done intentionally, it can be done just naturally. And there's groups that do it, and there's all kinds of networking groups out there. Some I like, some I don't like. And so, you as it's like a church. There's all kinds of different denominations. You've got to find the right fit for you personally and your organization. I can't talk enough and encourage people enough to start network, especially if you're young. Do it now. What a great opportunity to open
Mhm.
doors for you to either grow yourself or get a better business or start a business. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do through networking.
Yeah, I look back at my life, and believe it or not, I met Roger Moore, the guy that played James Bond. I had two different occasions where I met the younger George Bush. I was in a waiting room for over 45 minutes with Mr. Baker, who was secretary. He had Mark Rubio's job back then.
Yeah.
And I didn't reach out to any of these people. The people I could have connected with in my life, if I just had made the connections or tried. It's incredibly. But life is so much richer today because I network. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
like you said, that example makes you feel great having the ability to help that individual.
Yeah, and it's one where and it's interesting because 'cause we've moved around a lot, and it's interesting, some cities are better at networking than others. Nashville, I swear you're only 2 steps away from anybody you wanna meet. All you have to do is
Mhm.
ask, and they will connect you. I'm in Atlanta right now. It's a different environment here. They network, but it's a different feel than what I experienced in Nashville, and Scott, you're in Houston, I was in Houston at the time. Houston is different than Dallas, and I lived in Dallas. Dallas has a different vibe than Houston from a networking, connecting type of environment. And so you've got to find your niche of where you can kind of grow. And now with the internet, Scott, with network and action that you got, I'm involved in one that's nationwide because my business isn't just local. I can service people across the whole country. And so, I use the technology feature of it to network with people that are in areas that I could never get to before to help, connect to people that I would never have met.
Sure. There's some great online portals. Obviously, LinkedIn I've seen, LinkedIn's gone through its progressions, and I think it was going downhill when Microsoft bought it, and then it got really valuable with a lot of great additions. I'm a little worried right now because I don't know about you, but every time I open up my LinkedIn, if I've got 50 people introducing themselves, 49 and a half are trying to sell me something on the first contact, which is
Mhm.
just the wrong approach to networking. And that's because of all the AI bots and things. So I'm hoping LinkedIn's going to do something to bring that back in balance. But you can network in the back of your church when you leave your service on Sunday morning. You can network anywhere. It doesn't have to be a formal group. It's all about trying to find out how you can help someone else and make sure you keep your eyes and ears pointed in that direction to look for those opportunities.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, Scott, if we could. When it comes to building a network, you're actually building a community. You're building a community that is going to be relevant to you, and whether it be personal or business, as Dennis had said. How do you go about doing that? What do you have any lessons in terms of ideas behind that you could share with us and help us when we look to start doing and establishing a solid network?
Yeah, in terms of building a community, there's a great book. It's called Tribes, and it basically
Yeah.
the premise of Tribes is that Dennis and Benny and I could each build a group. We could be next door neighbors, the three of us, and Dennis could build a group of guys that don't like mustaches, and Benny could build a group of guys that don't like hair on their head, and I could build a group of guys that always want to wear a baseball cap. And if our heart's in the right place and we have the right technology to get people connected, we could all be wildly successful. So it's sort of like, the biggest mistake I see people make, honestly, is if they're thinking about joining a formal group, they'll want to visit and they'll say, well, I don't know in there if they're the right people are in the room. The right people, if you are a business owner and you've got a big company, you probably don't want to network with 20 people that are learning how to start up a business. That's not going to be the best use of your time. But if
Mhm.
you've got serious business owners and decision makers in a room, you don't know who they know. Like the example you used. And if I walked in the room and I said, I just can't help me. Well, then this guy that can do a multi six figure deal. I can't always judge who you know, right? My two neighbors, one of them manages like half of the facilities in the medical center in Houston. He's constantly asking me for something that he needs. And if you just saw me in a networking group, you didn't even know that I know that guy. So don't judge the room by who's in there, but give it the opportunity to show you who they know.
Well, and the other thing I always tell people too, if you do get in a group and there's, 20, 30 people in there, you don't have to get to know all of them the first week. I mean, find 2 or 3 that pique your interest and then go have one-on-ones with people because you're developing a relationship. You're not trying to sell to people. You're trying to develop that relationship so that when you need something or they need something, you come top of mind. I use LinkedIn to do reverse networking. So I'll look and see, okay, who's Scott connected with that knows people that make it up there in Georgia that, need these certain criteria things that I'm looking to provide. And then I'll reach out to Scott and say, hey, Scott, it looks like you might know these three people. Could you do an introduction for me?
Yeah.
Because people I found people are not the best about doing introductions. Or I would say a lot of times networking is networking of hope. That you hope they'll remember you. You hope they'll do the introduction. This one, I flip it and I say, "Hey Scott, here's three people. Here's even an email that you can copy and
Yes.
paste and send it for me on my behalf, and just do it." It's pretty straightforward and simple. It's not a lot of effort. You know,
I think there's
and
a little nugget there you just said that people shouldn't miss, and that's that go ahead and write the email. Make it easy for them. Hey, copy and
yeah,
paste this and send it on for me here.
yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like, and don't ask for 10 or 15 because that's a bunch of work. Ask for one or two, and then circle back 3 or 4 weeks later and ask Scott for another one or two, and it'll start happening naturally. I have my calendar on Friday afternoons. I block it and look at who did I meet last week, who are 1 to 2 people that I can ask for introductions for, and then I'd send them out, and then I get those set up the next week, and I'd start that whole process.
As soon as they send that introduction, go over and make a recommendation if you're on a platform like LinkedIn, or send them a postcard in the mail just thanking them. It's investing in that relationship. The quick story: I was sitting on the couch Sunday evening with my 12-year-old, and I called a friend I hadn't talked to in 11 years. I wanted some help around a little retreat we're hosting for our franchise owners. And I'm asking him all this stuff. And when I hung up, my son goes, how do you just call that guy, and ask him for a bunch of favors? And I said, well, when that guy was down and out and going through a divorce, I took him to Miami for 4 days and we had a good time. I made investments, right, in relationships. It's like a bank account. You deposit, deposit, deposit. That's one of the hardest things I think people have a hard time is asking for help. And in order to be a good networker, you've got to be willing to ask for help. People have to know they're in there for a reason if you're in a group. So don't be afraid to ask for help,
Yeah, that's a
assuming,
good
of
one.
course, you're making the deposits ahead of time.
Yeah. You actually bring up a good point there, and that's there's an authenticity that you're talking about there. And how do you build authentic relationships? I know for people naturally, if they're not in a networking environment, maybe they've been introduced to somebody as a friend of a friend or whatever. But if you're in a networking environment, in some ways, people have told me that it's challenging, especially introverts, right? Dennis and I don't have this problem, but I mean, in terms of like some of the times being able to go out there and be able to do that, how can you build from that? Any suggestions on that, Scott?
That's a great question. It's funny because if you ask our 150 franchise owners around the world, they would tell you it's probably the number one thing they look for when they're sitting with someone to invite them into the group.
Mm,
Because, not everyone's willing to be vulnerable. There's
yeah.
places you can take a person to a level. If you get too vulnerable, some people are going to leave the group. You can't really create meaningful groups, in my opinion, without a little bit of vulnerability. But authenticity is number one. And the people I've removed from my group, which is what I love about our model, that would be the number one thing I would say that they just really struggle being authentic. And you're
Mm,
there, obviously, to have a place and a cadre to build trust with. You can't do it without being authentic.
Well, I think, Scott, you hit it earlier on, when you're trying to meet people, whatever, don't try to sell the first time or two you meet them. I mean, have, if you're in the same city, have coffee with them, get to know them, find out, if you're in Texas, do you like Texas? Do you like Texas A&M? Are you a Texas Tech fan? Whatever. Get to know them. And then over the next time or two, you'll begin to trust each other more. You'll begin to share more. The goal is you become good friends because it's much easier to introduce friends than people you don't like. And you'll find there's people that you meet that there's some I just will not introduce because I don't like them. I'm not going to introduce them and put my name in front of their name as an introduction because they're not authentic. They're
That's
just selling and
exactly
they could care less about the person on the other end.
You're exactly right. If I'm putting my reputation, I'm putting my network at risk when I refer you. So yeah, there's got to be a
yeah.
trust there. No doubt about that. But I think the authenticity is one of the cool parts about what we do, and that we're looking for that because there's just somebody that's not showing up in an authentic way. It's really hard to get to know. But you hit on a good point. Introverts I don't like networking. I always tell somebody if you're an introvert, okay, grab a friend. It's not the best scenario in the world for two people to walk up to Benny and but it's better than not going,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
And it's better than not going. I tell a story. I was single, guys, for a long time. I didn't get married until I was 43 for the first time. And I remember one time I was sitting at a bar, and I two attractive women on my right, and I start talking to them. And Benny, I just must have asked them 50 questions. And I remember I got up to go to the restroom, and one of the ladies turned to her friend and she said, "Oh my God, he's so sweet." And I thought to myself, I could be a serial killer for all you know. All I did was ask you questions. I engaged you. I was interested in them, and I was being authentic, but I didn't start talking about myself or my product or my services.
Yeah.
We had an incident yesterday, a networking event, a networking action event, and when I walked in, one of the members, a coach, had placed a flyer at every seat, and you know what I did? I started picking them up. And I caught him on the side afterwards. I said, "I know you're trying to grow your business, right?" He goes, "Yeah." And I go, "You're hurting yourself.
Right.
Don't put this flyer." He was fairly new to the group, a couple months in. I said, "Don't put this flyer down, you know, go have one-to-ones with people, invite them to your free event, put the effort in, put the energy in, and it'll come to you tenfold." So you're right. You can't start by selling. That's the worst thing that can happen.
Well, that's like even on the email introductions. Mine is very, very simple. It's usually I'll say, Scott and Benny, hey, I get the opportunity to meet great people. When it makes sense, I like to extend those connections to others. You guys ought to connect. I don't tell them what you do because a lot of times if you put what they do, that person on the other end just filters out and says, "Oh, I don't want to talk to Scott
Yeah.
because I already had that."
Hmm.
They and a lot of times I'm asking for an introduction. It may not even business related. When I was in Franklin, I was in charge of the Christmas parade. A lot of times I was trying to get people to be in the parade, or I was trying to get the Budweiser Clydesdales there. So I was trying to connect to somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody at Budweiser to be able to get those Clydesdales in that daggone parade someday, which I never succeeded at, but I'm going to do here in Noonan. And so it's one of those things where you just never know who knows somebody who knows somebody. Cause it's like, if you wanted to connect with someone with the Indianapolis 500, my second grade teacher was Tony Holman's daughter. And I actually got to be in her wedding as a second grader on the finish line at the Indianapolis 500.
Oh my goodness.
You know, you wouldn't know that, but it's like, okay, if that came up in conversations, I might be able to connect you with somebody about the Indianapolis 500.
Working makes your life easier. And I'll give you two quick stories. One, I volunteered the day, about a year ago. I came home and told my wife, I said, they were about to cancel the all class reunion, 50 years of classes at my high school, 55. And they were going to cancel because the girls were busy and overwhelmed. And I said, "I'll pick it up." And I came home, my wife said, "Are you nuts? You need one more thing on your plate, like a whole." I said, "I got this." And you know what I did? One phone call, I had the video guy. One phone call, I had the caterer. One phone call, I had the people for the rental of the equipment. One phone call, I had the DJ. I literally made one phone call, got a guy to build about a 3-page website. We raised $52,000 to put this event on. We had 1,180 people there, had a great night. Everyone remembered. And it was
Yeah.
easy. It was easy. I
Yeah.
didn't lift a finger. And then, about a year and a half ago, I came home and I told my wife, "I got some good news." She says, "What's that?" I said, "We're leaving to go around the world for a year." "What?" "We have 3 kids and still in middle school." "How in the world are we going to do that?" I go, "We're going to delegate to all these people, all these who's that can step up and do things because of my network."
Yeah. And,
Huh.
And we left.
and you-
Unfortunately, the kids wanted to come home after 7 months, but we were able to, we were able to enjoy Egypt and Turkey and the Middle East and Dubai and, this great life experience. I'm an older dad, so I want to make sure that but it's all because of networking.
so
That's
Megan,
great.
who does our editing, loves to travel. So she'll probably want to hit you up and say, "Hey, if you need someone to
I
travel,
hope
she'll
she
go with
does.
you."
There's nothing I enjoy
Yeah.
more than sharing those stories.
Well, how let's talk a little bit about, I mean, this is really interesting. And I would imagine that, once people either join a community or start a community, is that that how do you keep people engaged once that initial excitement kind of wears off? Meaning that, when we all get together and if we're going to start a networking group together, whatever, there's a lot of initial excitement, but after some time, some of that can fade a little bit. Do you have any tips on making that last a little bit longer?
Guarantee you, you're spot on. And it's
Mm.
part of the challenge I have is that most of what we've been told about networking has taken place over the last 40 years. And either people are participating in one model or a knockoff of that model. And so, not to toot our own horn, but what I wanted to do is something completely different. So the way you do that is by being creative with what you do at every meeting. Whether you're meeting weekly or monthly, Dennis doesn't want to sit through some mundane meeting that's not bringing value. So if you can bring value to every meeting through different topics, as an example, going back to the COVID days, we were the first ones to introduce PPP loans to our members. few months later, it was idle loan. So here, 4 years removed, I have members tell me I'll never leave because I got my PP loan 8 months before my neighbor. We talked about crypto, we talked about AI. Now we're doing agendas beyond Chat GPT because everybody knows chat, but they don't know anything else. So there's so many things out there because it's so challenging to run a business today. You need to be the resource for your members to where they call you ahead of time and say, "Hey, I've got a conflict, but what's the agenda this meeting?" And you tell them like, "Oh my gosh, I can't miss." Right. So I think keeping the content fresh, and that's what networking has been missing for 40 years. And it's
Mm,
consequently why so few people do it.
And the other thing, because I'm a member of Network in Action that Scott's talking about, the other neat thing is they have a really, really robust website that allows you to track relationships, know who's inside your initial group, but how you can connect with other people throughout the country. I found that to be way more unique than so many of the other networking groups. And the other thing, it's once a month. The ones that are weekly, it's hard to commit that I'm going to go to a networking event once a week.
yeah. Hmm.
But monthly is good, and it's one where, again, you have to find the right mix. Mine I chose to do online because it's more advantageous. We moved from Nashville to Atlanta, and I still got to be in the group and still be involved without having to worry about driving to Nashville once a month to an
Yeah.
event. And so it works out really, really well. And then they have the breakouts and that kind of thing, but it's still about the people, but the technology comes together with it, and then the programming is, and what Scott's Network in Action does is really, really cool.
Pick up on that real quick, Benny. If you think about it, most people don't network because of the time investment,
Hmm.
whether it's a weekly meeting or a monthly. And the part that I would like to share that I've learned the hard way is my life got easier once I was willing to invest in relationships.
Hmm.
So think about it. If you spend some money and you're on page one of Google today and you stop spending that money tomorrow, your company falls off there the next day. But if I know you, Benny, through some networking groups and 3 years later, I have an opportunity to pass your referral, I always say it's the marketing that keeps on giving. I did this the
Yeah.
other day. I had a broker. I called him with a deal and he goes, "I haven't been in your organization in 2 years." I go, "So what? You're still a good guy."
Yeah.
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 And so
It's amazing.
relationships pay off till you're gone.
And
Well,
to our listeners, this is, it's if you own a business or you're in business, you think of networking, but also just as an employee, it's a great thing to get involved in because you never know in today's world when you might be laid off. And again, don't wait until you get laid off to start networking. You need to be building those relationships and talking to people 2 to 3 years out, in my
yeah.
mind, so that when you are ready to go, you've got trusted advisors, trusted relationships that can help you springboard to where you want to go much faster. And they may help you decide to leave your company sooner than you realize because you'll know if you want to be at your organization or not. Sending out resumes is not how you're going to land the job. You're going to get
Yeah.
it through knowing people that get that resume into the right person's hand. If you're sending it to HR, you're wasting your time and effort. You're just
Realize
helping.
uh, Microsoft's first customer came from Bill Gates' mother, who was on the board of a big charity, and they were looking at an IBM product. And she said, "Would you mind giving my son a chance at this bid?" The rest is
Yep.
history.
That's
True
right.
story. You
Yep.
just don't know where it's going to come from.
Hey, well, hey, let me ask you this, Scott, because I think that Dennis brought up a good point, and I wanted to expand upon that. With a lot of the networking, if you're old timers like Dennis and I, we did it at networking groups, and we would meet people, and shake hands. And then obviously COVID kind of changed a lot of things, but in the meantime, it's always been around. But you have environments like LinkedIn and whatnot. How do you maintain relationships when you rarely see somebody in person? If, like, for instance, Dennis has a lot of people that he knows in Pennsylvania and he's over there in Georgia. And obviously knowing you, but being out in Texas, how do you maintain these relationships? It's easy if you say, "Hey, I'll see you once a month or every other week or whatever." But if it's online primarily and you want to maintain that, what are some tips that you can give?
Yeah, it's there. It's the answer is effort. And so what I do is I sort of break people into four circles. Family and wife and kids are there in that really tight circle, and then my next circle is people I can call for a favor, like my buddy the other day that I alluded to. The next circle is people that maybe I'm going to see once or twice a year, and the outside circle is just people I want to keep in my network. And I try to stay organized with just touch points. It can be an article about business, something coming down about AI, and I just send an email to you guys randomly. Hey, long time haven't talked to you. I thought you might find this interesting. Just trying to add value. And I can knock out 100 emails in 3 or 4 minutes just by forwarding the same email. But it doesn't come without effort. In that
Mm,
other circle that gets a little closer, I try to send a card. I have a stupid little $9 membership in American Greetings where you can send an electronic card in about 30 seconds. It's free, unlimited. It's
nice.
just a touch. Trying to stay front of mind, let them know I'm here if I can help. And that's come back to me tenfold. It happened recently in the last 3 months where one of those people in the outer circle said, "I know you're awarding franchise. I got a friend that I think would be great at this," and he's now a franchise owner. I didn't expect that, but the problem with most of us is the investment of time. We think networking takes so much time, and it doesn't have to take so much time, but it does take an investment. But I'm telling you,
Mm,
the dividends are greater than I ever imagined.
Benny, one of the ones for me, and it was from back in November, Scott, because it was Thanksgiving time for Network in Action. And the session was on just, thanking people and all that. And so the exercise was to handwrite a note and send it to somebody. I've gotten more value. So I've got it set up now once a month. I do one handwritten note to a customer and one note to a prospect and just send it. And it takes a little bit of time. It's amazing what you get out of a handwritten note because nobody receives mail
That is
anymore.
anymore.
yeah, that's happened to me. I've gotten that, and I'm like, "What is this?" And
Is
this
this?
is cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's an interesting touch,
And
and
you're just thanking them, and then at the bottom
yeah,
say, "Hey, I would love to stay in touch, and if I can help you in any way or anyone in your network, would appreciate it." It's amazing how it's opened doors for me.
Same thing happens with a quick phone call. I mean, think about it. I don't know about you, but I've got a pretty large company. We're in 8 countries and have 350 groups, and my phone never rings unless it's the spam. So I'll try to and you can always get away with text, but just a touch point, make sure they know
Yeah,
you're still alive and
yeah.
still thinking about them.
Scott, this is a really great conversation. I know there's going to be a lot of other questions that people have. Dennis, I know you've got what Scott has here in terms of his company. Can you pull that up there for a sec?
I can, except my computer just decided to do a weird thing. Keep talking there, Benny, because it's not there.
Well, let's do this. Hey, Scott, listen, I know that there are going to be people out there who have some really, some other questions that we couldn't cover here in the podcast. But if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to be able to reach out to you, be able to say hi and just ask you a question or two?
Sure, I would love to speak with anyone. I'm going to give my cell phone number first: 713-417-6152. If you have any questions or you want to push back against anything we said here, I'd love to hear from you. Love to have a discussion. Love talking about and meeting new people, really, is what I'm going to enjoy the most. And then my email is scott@networkinaction.com. Either way would be great.
And this is one of their websites that we use as a member, and it just has all the information around how to network and what you're doing with your group and all that. So it's a great tool that we use in Network in Action and love it.
They say if Facebook and LinkedIn got married and had a baby, it'd be the Network in Action website. So that's sort of what we emulated.
There you go.
But it was designed on purpose to reduce the amount of time we have to be in front of each other to stay connected. You think about it, 99% of people have their phone with them 99% of the time. So
Mm,
let's
yeah.
utilize that technology to build
Yeah.
deeper relationships.
Always thinking one step ahead. I love it, Scott. Well, listen, hey, Scott, thank you so much for stopping by today. This has been a nice educational moment here for me to understand and realize kind of the depth and breadth about networking and a little bit more about it. But thank you so much. We appreciate the time and let's keep networking out there.
Listen, you guys are doing great work, changing lives. So keep it up. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Scott. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to WFH with Two Guys. We'll see you next time.